Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen because this is the Bunker Codes podcast. Hooray! I'm your host, Chance Paladin, and my co-host is eating cat snacks off the floor because my co-host is a cat. This episode of whatever number episode this is filmed in front of a live studio audience, so their names will be kept anonymous for their own protection. But I assure you, there are people in the chat and they are laughing at me. And ignore the dogs in the background, like I try to do. Oh, Ringo's done eating his snacks. So I have a litany of topics, because practically by the time I finish an episode, I have another set of topics already. So, I just got done recording my book review for Southern Prepper One's new book, Nuclear War Survival, the 1-hour crash course, learn the basics fast just in case. I just finished my review for that. Spoiler alert, it's good. But I'm not going to be mixing that video in this video. Podcast, audio, whatever. I'm not mixing the two. It's its own thing. So ignore the dogs in the background and try to breathe. And hopefully the dog barking stops soon. This episode was supposed to be about the Bunker Codes hardbound, which is not it's published, but it's in draft until I get it's in draft until I get the proof. The cool thing is, I haven't done a proof since Amazon bought the old printer that I used to use. And so I tried that and it looks like it comes super fast. So I might be getting it in the next couple days. It'll say proof, do not resell, blah, blah, blah. But I need that to check the colors, the margins, the inside margins. I've been debating like slowly pushing out the margins so you don't have to like open the books as wide. I've been playing with that. I want to make sure the book cover prints fine, which I know it will, but and then there's like 29 plus color images, and this is the first time I've ever done color. So instead of this being a whole Bunker Codes hardbound podcast, what I think I'll do is I'll save it for when it gets here in a couple days. But suffice it to say, teaser spoilery alert, the back of the book is the game board for bunkers and batteries, and it looks phenomenal. My wife helped me with the finishing touches on it, which added some much needed perspective, literally. So that's cool. And I did a bunch more cards for it yesterday, but my concern is that now I'm making like way too many cards for the card game, which is a concern. But I am still working on it. I'm looking forward to people's feedback, honestly, on what they think about it. I have to find somebody that's actually interested in it. So that's that. 29 of kind of like the Far Side style comics in it. Some of them are funny, some of them are serious. They kind of tell a story, but it's out of order. But that's because I wasn't going to reorganize the whole entire book just to be in the order of how the comic was written. If those comic pages are popular enough, I'll make the comic a standalone. Especially since Amazon color paper is like really affordable now. So I can actually, if the quality of these turns out okay, I can actually make a color comic book for like only a couple dollars. Oh, okay. Appreciate you. Take care. This will be on YouTube later on tonight. So instead of a comic book costing $4 or $5, I can't remember. Comic books used to just be horrendously expensive to print. Absolutely prohibitively expensive to print a comic book. If this works and it looks good, which I pray it does because I spent a long time on it, so I am praying that these images look at least okay. If there's enough interest, I will do a comic book. Should be pretty easy, actually. But only if there's interest. Making the comic book, ironically, would be easier than trying to do the card game. So anyway, so look forward to that next time. I have a whole litany of topics here. I don't want to talk about dog. Okay, I have a bunch of topics. The first one's dogs as security. I don't want to talk about like that right now. The dogs are giving me a headache. The NRA. This is more kind of like boomer stuff, but I want to get it out of the way. The NRA really shat the bed, and that was seen for a long time as one of the bulwarks, the hedging against the infringements on our rights. But the NRA did a lot of things that were very fuddy in nature, and I don't think they did enough to bring the entire gun culture together. In fact, I think they did a lot of things to divide it, and then they squandered a lot of their money that they got. And so while our forefathers may have been huge NRA supporters, and maybe at the time that made sense because it was the only thing that's out there, there's a lot of newer pro-2A gun lobbies, firearms lobbies, pro-2A lobbies, that are a lot more undivided as to their stance on 2A. Nothing against Charlton Heston and From My Cold Dead Hands, but they needed somebody after him that was still going to bring everybody together, and they didn't do that. And they brought in like Colion Noir, who's great, and then a bunch of others, but then they just let a lot of that lapse. And it kind of sort of seems like they just stopped caring. Locally, they were still doing a lot. Like locally where we lived, they were still doing a lot. But a lot of people had begun hating them by then. And a certain YouTuber who I won't name, who is an absolute joke, was trolling them the last time I bumped into them, and it was just very not helpful because they were a pair of kids, and they were really trying, and he was just a real jerk to them. And if they are around, I really haven't seen them around since, and it's been a few years. So I'm not really 100% sure what they're doing anymore, if anything. I think they tried to declare bankruptcy. They tried to move to Texas. It was really a lot of like too little too late, and it just feels more like a lot of like single party controlled opposition BS, where I'm sure there was a lot of them like trying to do a lot of good, but I don't know. I don't know what happened. And I guess I don't really deserve to have a say in it because I hadn't thrown them any money, or at least any money of any significance. But like the generation before me were like lifer NRA members and like lifer, what was it? I can't remember the different gun associations, but they were part of gun clubs and shooting clubs and doing the hunting thing and three gun and blah 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 blah. The prior generation, like there's still some of that, but like there's a lot of new stuff too. Like there's a whole 3D printing gun scene that's just amazing. There's a lot of like newer stuff, right? And the lobbying is important, but also people just having fun in a safe manner and still observing all of the principles of being a responsible gun owner, I think are all equally important. And I don't know if any of the newer, I don't even remember. There's a couple of them, and I should have had their names ready, but it's not like any of them have ever reached out to me, and I don't think any of them ever will. I don't think I'll ever have sponsors. Because I think any YouTuber who won't put their face up on their channel is going to be is never going to get anywhere. That's the same for any live streaming. You have to put your face out there to get anything, and that's fine. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this because I think it's important for everybody to know that they're not alone. And so, if you were discouraged by the NRA, I still encourage you to see. Holy cow, my brain is just Mr. Guns and Gear. He would be able to tell you like a lot of the newer ones to support. I have to get myself and my loved ones out of this area before I can think of diving into each one of them and figuring out which one of them to support. There's people with a lot more money than me and a lot more time than me, and they know a lot more people and a lot more knowledge, and they're a lot more experienced. Some of them are FFLs and stuff. They know who to support and what to do. Like I don't. I'm still very much at the beginning of my journey. Which isn't to say that if you're even newer at this than me, then you shouldn't start. Because it is like a big ocean. But you shouldn't be scared of it. You should just do your research and learn and tiptoe your way through things while the rest of us try to figure it out a little bit better than you. And hopefully together we'll all get there. Firearms insurance, no. Concealed carry insurance was like another one of those things. Where it was like, it was a good idea and it made people feel a lot better. And it wasn't a rug pull. The problem is some of the states just like banned it. And I think the states around here like banned it. And so while there was YouTubers that may have been supporting concealed carry insurance, it's not that it was a rug pull or a scam. It's that it's just not available in a lot of areas anymore. But the lobby portion of 2A is still very much alive, and the problem is they need a lot of money because they're fighting court cases and all, sometimes 2, 3, 4 court cases in every single state. So if you're ever wondering why they act like they need so much stinking money, that's why. Like in our state alone, I think there's like 3 or 4 bills at any given time, which cost money to go fight in court. Even though they can put these things through on our dime, we have to in turn fight them on our own dime. which is really unfortunate. So check out Mr. Guns and Gears channel. I think he and probably Colio Noir probably both have, if you feel like donating money to any of those organizations, I feel like those two channels would be two of the most reputable channels to explain who to donate to and why and what each one of them does. But essentially, they're lobbyists, but they're also like fighting the court cases, fighting these bills in court, and showing how they're against the Constitution. That way we can retain our Second Amendment. So that's kind of my NRA thing. I don't necessarily blame the toppling of the NRA on boomers. I just think that something happened at some point and there wasn't really any checks and balances for them anymore. And I think everyone had been supporting them for so long. I think it took people a really, really long time for them to admit that there was issues. Or it took a long time for everybody else to admit that there was issues. There, I'll say it that way. So, let's see. What do I want to talk about next? Put a little X next to that one. Take a break for a second and rest my voice. All right. For our next topic, I'm going to bundle together some money, banky, crypto-y, homelessy, home pricing stuff. So if you're tired of that, then okay. If you're not tired of it, then here, let's go. Let's go. So unfortunately, my note only says more on crypto, didn't think I explained it enough. That's what my note says. More on crypto, didn't think I explained it enough. So I'm not 100% sure. Oh yeah. This is a generational get rich quick thing. Crap. That's okay. We'll talk about it anyway. It sort of fits in. Crypto get rich sort of I think. So here's the thing. Generational gap wise, a lot of older folks and some newer younger folks didn't like the whole crypto thing. They're really skeptical of it, or they don't understand it. So here's the thing. I wanted to touch on this in an earlier podcast, but I didn't quite know how to articulate it right. So I want to say you can't be mad at the younger generations for trying technologies just because you don't like them or understand them. Sort of like if someone beats you in a new way in a video game and you think they're cheating, but maybe they're just doing something you don't like, so you say it's cheap, but really it's like you just don't like it. It's the same thing with fourth gen warfare. You're fighting a war and your enemy isn't fighting the war the way you like, so you call it terrorism instead. You call them insurgents or whatever. In reality, they're just not fighting a conventional war and you're pissed off at them. And I feel like a bit of that is the way like crypto is. Like, oh, you're not earning money in a conventional way, therefore we're going to attack you. And call crypto stupid. Well, crypto's not stupid. There's a lot of uses for the blockchain. And what crypto did was it gave the power and potential to earn money back to the people without a third party to gatekeep the whole thing. Just like the internet gave everybody a voice, which I'll talk about the internet again in a future video. Crypto gave everybody the ability to gain large sums of money really fast. And people didn't like that. I worked my whole life. Well, it's no different than like the .com boom. Some people made a lot of money in the .com boom. A lot of people busted. Like, it's high risk, high reward, right? The only difference is, like, crypto doesn't gatekeep any of that. Any newbie, dodo brain, can go in there and throw a bunch of money on a meme coin because it sounds cool. And if they happen to ride the right one, depending on a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that they might not even know is going on, as all the big boys, all the big players, all the whales throw money around and play with things, all of a sudden you can get like 25% or 700% or 7,000%. And if you put in like $5, you just made $10. If you put in $500, you can just get back 5,000. You know, you don't stay in it for long, and there's a lot of risk and reward stuff. I'm not a financial investor, so don't do anything stupid. Don't put anything in that you aren't willing to lose, and not your keys, not your crypto. But like, don't pretend crypto is any better or any worse than gold or silver. Like, if you know what you're doing, you can buy things with crypto. I have bought things with crypto. You can do it. The parallel economy exists, but that's a different subject. Yes, a lot of people got rich, like stupid crypto rich. But a lot busted too, until people started seeing that it was being played by the whales. Which is fine. That's what happens. Like, you're in an ocean with a lot of really big fish. So, here's the thing though. The banks do this every day. And if you don't think the banks have crypto, then you're naive. All of the banks have crypto. If you think the 3-letter agencies don't have crypto, they do. Because they have to buy, sell, and transact on the same side markets that everyone else is operating. So they absolutely have to have crypto. And again, I love my country. So don't think that I wish any ill will on anybody. I don't. There's a lot of good people that work at a lot of the 3-letter agencies. So don't think I'm a bad guy, because I'm not. We're all on the same side, working towards a better country, and everything's gonna be fine. So don't think that I'm talking anything bad. Just related to crypto, though, there's a lot of folks in the financial industries that don't like it. They don't like it because they can't control it, because it's not under their control. Like the banks, they can't just go seize a crypto. So several banks crashed last week. Several big banks, several very, very, very big banks crashed last week. And the 3-letter agencies could swoop in and freeze the whole thing and stop the apocalypse from happening. And I'm not saying that's bad. There should have been regulations in place. And you go, oh, but wouldn't you be for like deregulation, XYZ, blah, 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 you know, the market corrects itself? Yes, I believe the market does correct itself. However, when the ship has already sailed and the bad actors are already encouraged to act poorly, and there is no risk and very high reward, because they know no matter how stupid they act, they get bailed out. And when they're making toxic loans with interest rates that are completely out of their control, they're going to get bailed out. Not every time, but most of the time. Like, we don't choose the winners and losers. They do. So we're just along for the ride, right? So those are banks. Now, if you figure in crypto, I would argue that you don't have to be smarter unless you just want to lose everything, right? It's not like choosing a bank. Like, oh, I could go with. Well, don't go with Wells Fargo. They had issues too. Go choose your favorite local credit union. You're not really deciding whether or not your $100 is just going to disappear into the nether. It's okay. So you don't really have to do a lot of research. You can just see if you like them and if they're close and they have the hours you like, and if there's a nice person there that smiles at you and makes you feel good about yourself. So with crypto, though, you have got to do a lot of research. And so crypto people tend to end up being way, 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 way smarter, savvier, more cautious. They do way more research. And they kind of get a lot more of a sense of all the ebbs and flows of the economy and the market, and if it's happy or sad. So they're tied into everything more. They also lose a lot of money. They lose a lot of money because they're at the whims of the whales and all of the governments that own billions of crypto, because they do. Because if any one government, China, could just, if they mined enough Bitcoin to just own all the Bitcoin, then China would be the richest country in the world by factors of 10 plus. I don't even know. Like, they would be like crypto insane rich if they owned all the Bitcoin. They couldn't do it though because they didn't have enough electricity. If they had like a bunch of nuclear power plants, and if they had been making their own cards, and they tried to mine all the crypto, they probably could have owned Bitcoin. But they couldn't quite do it. They had to do it illegally, and it didn't work, and it backfired. And they're like, well, if we can have it, nobody can. But you can't trash Bitcoin because one Bitcoin's one Bitcoin. You can't crash it. So that's why Bitcoin, that's why crypto is never going to crash, because there's people that are using it every day that don't care what it's worth. They're just using it because it's worth whatever it says it's worth. So if you want to send money to your family, you can send it with crypto and it takes like 2 seconds. And there isn't some god-awful fee and regulators and taxes and fees and fines, and you're just sending money to your family and they just bloop bloop pop it right back out again. Takes like 2 seconds, no fees, no fines, it's instantaneous. You don't have to go to like a MoneyGram and do all this shit and go through like all these damn institutions that are just like old. I can't even think of like a good metaphor. They're just these old slogs, which is hilarious, right? Because you might think, oh, but in the bank, I can go get it out and I can go see somebody. I can go talk. You can't actually. Like, every time I used to go to the bank, they didn't even want to talk to me. They would tell me to go back outside and use the ATM. I'm like, there's like 6 of you in here. You're not doing anything. I'm not going out and using the damn ATM. But now there's like all these scams where people can put things on the ATM machine and scam you and stuff. Like, I want to go to a person, right? But if you think that's your money in the bank, you are sadly mistaken. If you go bring a check to a bank and try to cash it, 9 times out of 10, they want you to have a bank account there. Because you're not actually cashing your check. They're just taking money out of your bank account. And then in 3 to 5 plus who knows how many days, finally that check will finally clear. Even though that shit should all be instantaneous, it's not. And then the money from that check goes into your account to offset the money. And if you ever don't believe me, go run your account upside down and go try to cash a check at your bank. You won't be able to. They won't let you do it. They will take your money, and then if you have any left, they might give you some in a week, maybe if you're lucky. So credit unions might be different. I'm talking about the big banks. Credit unions are quite a bit different. So here's another thing about the banks. This is why bank scams work as well as they do. And this is why, especially older people, they get confused by this, why they're so much more prone to being scammed, because they believe that that's their money, but it's not. So if somebody tells you, like, hey, I'm going to give you a $6,000 check, and I want you to give me $3,000 in cash, and you just keep the other $3,000, you think that's a big deal, right? But again, that's why you don't know that they're taking your $3,000 out of your account, not out of that check. That's how that scam works. And someone I know that should have known better got scammed out of a lot of money by somebody who knew for a long time. Social engineering is a very, very dangerous thing. That's why you don't trust anybody. Anybody. Even checks that are 100% insured by, like, the Department of Treasury or whatever, they can have all the little stamps and codes and numbers, and the check can say it's insured, the whole 9 yards. You can direct transfer the damn thing into your account. Whatever, it does not matter. Like, they will sit on that check for 3 to 5 days or longer. Like, your unemployment check, like your Social Security checks, your tax refunds. They will sit. There was, oh gosh, I can't remember what bank it was. There was a couple banks doing this where they were sitting on people's tax returns for like 30 days. And they were just collecting the interest on everybody's tax returns for like 30 days. I can't remember what bank it was. This was a couple years ago. And it was a big deal because, like, the tax returns got No, was it tax returns or was it? No. It was a stimulus check. It was one of the first stimulus checks. And one of the banks, I want to say Bank of America, but, like, don't quote me on that. Don't sue me. But they sat on the checks for like a month or something, a month. It was a long time. And those were insured. Those were insured checks, and they were like direct deposited. And the bank still sat on the money. And I think that should have been a huge red flag, that they probably didn't have enough capital to cover it all. Because maybe it still doesn't actually get, like, direct deposited. But the way money trickles down, you would think the banks would be able to, like, instantly add money to people's accounts, but I think the problem is like, that cash has to come from somewhere, right? So let's pretend you have a bank. You're the bank of beer. You're the beer bank. And somebody digitally transfers you $1,000. You still don't actually have $1,000 cash. So if somebody comes to get that $1,000 cash out, you really don't have it, because nobody brought it to you. You have to use $1,000 of your own cash, then you have to try to remember to go get $1,000 more cash from somewhere else. The treasury or whatever. There's a lot of stuff about how money rolls down that I still don't completely understand, but I'm starting to get a lot more of it now. And I'm understanding a lot more about how the banks get highly encouraged to take on more loans and bonds and things, whatever they are. But then the Fed jacks the interest rates up. The banks will never have enough money to cover that. And especially since the banks are allowed to use X amount of your money that you give them to try to raise more money with that money, because banks are for profit for some weird reason. They have to make their money somewhere and somehow, and so they just reinvest everybody's money, and sometimes they lose it all. And unfortunately, the bonds or whatever they are, the interest rates keep going up, that they're pretty much forced to take. The banks are just running out of money because the money doesn't exist. They have to wait until the Fed or however it works, I can't remember, whoever gives them all the money, they have to wait for more money. it can get wired to them. It's like Freddie Mae and Fernie Mac or whatever. My head's hurting really bad. I'm sorry. The big ones, they have to get the money kind of like trickled down to them, and then that kind of frees up their credit to be able to loan more money out. But I don't know. Kind of crypto has its uses. The banks have their uses. I don't think we'll ever be able to get away from crypto, but I think it'll be banned. And I made this speculation a long time ago, and I think I'll make it again. I can't remember which Fed chairs said it, but they outlined their plan and laid out their plan. And it was to eventually like absorb all the banks and then absorb the stock market, and then somewhere in there they'd ban crypto and roll out FedCoin. I think what we're seeing with like the 80,000 IRS agents that are probably to help with that, that if you force the banks to take on loans that there's no way they can pay back, eventually you'll just own all the banks. And then it wouldn't be a stretch from there that the stock market crashes, and then so you're forced to take over the stock market because you just took over the banks. Now you have to take over the stock market, and then you can just say nobody can add anything to crypto anymore. And then if you lock down the phones and you lock down everybody's computers, you could VPN, but if they do KYC, and nobody can trade crypto without IDs anymore because money laundering, even though everybody already money launders with just the normal currencies. I don't know why they're worried about crypto, because they can't even trace normal money around. Just stupid. But that's how you get rid of crypto, and then you swap, and then you go, crypto was bad. We need to swap it with FedCoin. Same thing with stablecoin. And a lot of the stable coins, which are supposed to be pegged to the US dollar, a lot of the funding for stable coins is in banks. And if the banks crash, the stable coin's not pegged to anything anymore. I think they knew that. And again, some of these companies have billions and billions of dollars to try to keep their stable coins pegged. But if that money's frozen in a bank account, it basically ceases to exist. It's not their money anymore. And you can keep cash at your house, but like, there's so many things, and I'm speaking of this from personal experience. There are so many things that you cannot do with cash. There's a lot of your bills that you cannot pay with cash. You have to have them on auto pay, which means you have to have a bank account or a credit card. They force you to do it. You can't pay them with checks. And then once you put them on auto pay, a lot of times you can't take it off without canceling the card. And if they have your routing address, there's a lot of places that can directly debit your account through your routing address. So it's in their best interest to not let you get away from the banks and to not let you get away from your cell phone. They want to have you completely clamped down. So even though crypto is risky, it has a lot of just amazing use cases. It's not just for fun. Just like, the Second Amendment. It's for fun, but there's a lot of valid use cases. Crypto, there's a lot of fun. And I'm not talking about stupid dog pictures. I find it as a way for me to be involved, since I don't do the stock market and I don't trust that at all. I can go choose cryptos that I like. And I'm an IT guy. I like IT stuff, and crypto is, for the longest time, crypto was the coolest thing until AIs. And so a lot of people were mad because some people were getting rich at crypto and they were circumventing the whole process. But I think people are realizing more and more and more that being like a wage slave your whole life isn't going to get you where you need to be. And I think the younger generation, they weren't doing it so they could be like lazy their whole life and just get rich and then just screw off. Like, I think it's because they're getting increasingly desperate, realizing there's absolutely no way for them to catch up where we are now. And look no further than this article in the UK where the junior nurses, which I guess for all intents and purposes, it sounds like the definition is they're just a normal nurse. They can do all the normal nurse things, but it's kind of like an entry level, but they can still do it all. Apparently the nurses were making about as much as like baristas at like the coffee shops. And I don't think that was tips and stuff. I think that was just hourly rate. And we're already experiencing like a nurse shortage. Why on earth are nurses getting paid so little? Are like hospitals just not making enough money? Like, I find that hard to believe because hospitals cost a fortune. Insurance costs a fortune. Although in the UK I would say, well, maybe it has to do with quote unquote free healthcare. Everyone's like, aha, we have free healthcare. Yeah, but all your nurses are making basically minimum wage. Like, is that really where you want to be as a country? I thought you wanted living wages. You want to go get your free healthcare, but don't you want your nurse to have a living wage? Seems kind of weird. Although I have no idea what the living wage in the UK would be. 30 quids an hour? 40 quids an hour? So I know that quid's doing a little bit better than USD, but 17 an hour is maybe only 20 or 21 an hour here. That's higher than what you used to be able to get on a college education. It used to be you could only get $17 an hour here without a college education, and then as soon as you get your degree, sometimes they would bump you up to like between 20 and 23. But so I feel like a nurse, I'm just ballparking here. I think nurses here, like starting them at like 23 to 25 an hour would be like more than fair in most parts of the US. I don't know what they actually start at. I guess I could go look it up, but I'm not going to because I think the rule on the show is no research. So they're making like quite a bit less. They're making at least $2, $3, $4 less than that, just based on purely on my imagination. Now that doesn't even take into account how much money they have to make back to pay their student loans and stuff. So that's a whole deal. So the point is like, unless they have really, really huge pay scale rate increases, they're never going to catch up. And the only way they will be able to catch up is if everybody else stops getting raises, which is going to be really bad. But that's like universal basic income. But then there's really no incentive to keep working harder. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how the younger generation catches up to where we are now. I'm definitely do not think that I am. I feel like I should be making at least another 20 or 30%. That could happen since I haven't got a raise in 5 years. You know, and I'm due, so you know, maybe I'm going to get some kind of raise, and I don't know what it's going to be because they won't tell me. But in 5 years, I would hope that it would be at least 10-15%, but really I'm hoping like 20-25%, because it's like 5 years, right? A couple percent a year. But here's the problem, though. There's no way that the people starting out right now are ever going to catch up to me. And I know the people that started doing this 5-10 years before me, they're making double what I am. Actually, they were making double what I was 13-14 years ago in some cases. When I was 26, 27 years old, I was already working, bumping my chair into my coworker that was making over 100 an hour. I can't even imagine what he must be making now, and that was only at one of his jobs. So I knew there was no way I could catch up to him then, and even still now, 15 years later, 16 years later, I'm still nowhere even remotely close to catching up to him. But I have to think about how he was maybe 15 years older than me or whatever. So I wouldn't really be where he was for maybe another 5-10 years. And but me going at the rate I'm going now, not the pay rate, just how my career's going, I know that in 10 or 15 years I still won't even be anywhere close to what he was 15 years ago. The problem is, if he is working in another 10 years, the dude is like he's a millionaire multiple times over. So I don't even know. I don't even know it then. He's funny. He's a funny guy. Super like genius level, but really down to earth. I know in 10 years, I still won't have caught up with what he was 15 years ago. If he's still working, he's going to even be more exponentially ahead because his growth and his pay, like, he just has a way of like exponentially increasing his earnings because he can command such a presence where he works, and he provides like just an astronomical amount of value that he could literally do anything and raise any business to just an insane level. So I certainly will never be able to compete with him in that regard either, and I'm not sure that there's any path for me to even get those skills anymore, let alone just make that money, because I don't think I'm entitled to that money. The dude's genius. He could employ hundreds and hundreds of people and start his own businesses over and over and over again. So I wouldn't pretend that I'm on his level or any of the other VPs or presidents I've worked with in the past at companies, really, really big corporations. They're just a higher caliber than me. So I'm not trying to grow in that way. I'm not trying to be like an executive level manager. If I have to manage and lead some people and kind of step up from mentoring into management, lower management, where I'm just kind of, leading a team, like a team lead, not a manager, like a team lead, I'd be comfortable with that. But like, people have said that I would make like a good executive because I'd be like actually fair and not a raging sociopath, which not all of them are, but a couple of them are completely disconnected from reality. Some people have said I'd be good at that, and that's nice to say, and I don't know until I try, and they say the best managers are the ones that don't want to be managers. But I don't think there's a path for me to get there. And this isn't me complaining about myself. what I'm saying is, like, for the next generation, if I don't think there's a path there for me to step ahead and lead, because there's just so many leaders and not enough worker bees that are worth half a shit right now. I don't see how the next generation is being set up to be successful. I don't see how they're going to be the next executives. And you could say, well, it's because they're all a bunch of little crypto shitters and they want to just like snort coke off hookers' butts and screw around on an island all day or whatever. Like, no, there's always going to be like elite weirdos that live in excess and get further and further off the deep end in their excesses, whether it's Hollywood or the movie industry, the music industry, the political. There's always going to be weirdos. Like, the richer they get, the more comfortable they get, the weirder they get. Because when you already have everything, you just get into weirder and weirder stuff. There's always going to be people like that. That is what it is, and you just learn to stay away from them. So I'm not talking about that. I just mean, like, how is the next generation supposed to get into management? Because people aren't retiring. Politically, there's no term limits. Privately, there are some companies where they only let the president be the president for a few years because they always want new ideas, fresh ideas. But like, there's some places where the managers kind of rotate through. But you want some semblance of stability. But like, you end up with a lot of deadbeats that are just putting in their time and that's it. It used to be like, you get to work early and you stay late and the last person there got the bragging rights, and that's how they decided, who was working the best by who put in the most hours, even though they weren't necessarily making money from it. Like, whoever was like sacrificing the most time away from their family is how like the hierarchical structure works, and it's not that way anymore. Instead, what you have is it's like a race to the bottom to see who can do the least and get away with it. And then whoever is bearing like the brunt of your group's weight, more and more weight gets shifted to them as everybody else does less and less. And as soon as they find somebody accountable, everybody else becomes less and less and less accountable. And there's no checks and balances in the system to hold everybody else responsible in case. I mean, not in case. Instead, everybody just makes excuses for everybody else underperforming. I hear that like, oh, there's so many people that need jobs and there's so many hard workers out there and stuff. I sure don't see it. I see a lot of lazy, entitled people who do not want to work. And I'm not talking about like kids. I'm talking about everybody. I don't know where all of the high performing people went to work, but I have this sense that the only people that are going to be successful and moving up are people that are really, really high performing. And the issue for the younger generation is going to be, if nobody holds them to a standard and sets their expectations that they expect excellence and hold them to a high standard, and then doesn't just freaking kick them to the curb if they don't want to put in 110%, bust their ass, and make something, then like, it's not the kids' fault. It's going to be our fault for not demanding excellence from them. But it already sucks if we're already burdening the weight of all of our coworkers being freaking deadbeats it just wears us out. And like a big part, a huge part of why I made it as far as I did was I had so many people that were still within my generation, but maybe 3 years, 5 years, 7, 10 years, just a little bit ahead of me. Almost all of them, just a little bit ahead of me, that pushed me, and then they would help me get unstuck, and they would help me break through my barriers, and then get right back to pushing me. And then they all said the same thing, like, if they help me through this, and if I get through this, what I have to do is I have to help everybody else. And I had to say that I was going to do that. And I have. And there's a lot of people that I promised that to. And they would get me to where I needed to be. But that I had to stay there. And then I had to start pulling everybody else up. And I believe I do that. The people that I work with, I bring them all up. Unless they're just absolute deadbeats. And then I make sure I don't get dragged down to their level. But it's really hard for me. I'm so used to helping people that I get used. And I think that's a good, like, if you're like, oh man, you've been talking about corporate shit for like 20 minutes. But like, it's the same thing with a prepper, right? You prep. And then you've got other people who haven't sacrificed anything, but they're entitled. It's like, no, you didn't put in the sacrifice. That doesn't mean you're a gatekeeper. That doesn't mean that they can't try. But you have deadbeats that try to swoop in at the last second, and it's the same thing in corporate, and it's the same thing as a prepper. Like, yes, there's rotational stock, so there's kind of like short-term and long-term stuff. And yes, things have gotten more expensive, especially camping stuff. But like, the knowledge and the skills cannot be taught overnight. They just can't. What works and what doesn't work takes time and experience, and it takes you having to do it yourself. And what works for you might not work for someone else, and what works in your area might not work somewhere else. And it's not that you're gatekeeping it. You're only gatekeeping it if you refuse to teach people that are new. Then you're gatekeeping. But if they try to swoop in and take over, and they're not putting in the time or the effort, they're not gatekeeping, they're just tearing you down. They're just wasting your time, and they're just dragging you down with them, because once they drag you down, then they use that to beat you over the head with. And I've realized a lot of things in the last week about gatekeepers, whether it's houses or jobs or, pay rates. Like, crypto has a huge learning curve. Coding has a huge learning curve. You're only gatekeeping if you refuse to help new people that want to learn. But if you set expectations and people are trying to barge their way in and boss their way around without actually immersing themselves and learning like the context, they're just spouting off gibberish. They're not immersing themselves, and they just ask you questions, but it's none of it's being absorbed or applied. You have to choose to mentor people who actually have the capacity and the desire to move ahead. And if that's a younger generation person, which I would argue they want it more. So for a few years there, the Gen Zers and the millennials, were coming to work and they were slacking off and they wouldn't get off their damn phones and they wouldn't stop surfing the friggin' internet. And some of the sort of in the middle of the road Gen Zers were like trying to start up businesses like while they were still at work. That was really annoying. There's even some like Gen Xers and they were like running businesses out of their work and people selling Girl Scout cookies. Like there was a lot of that bullshit going on. But a lot of that has gone by the wayside now, and a lot of the younger generation, I would argue, wants it more. Like they want to be successful more because the more competitive ones have worked their way to the top. Not the top. The top of their own mental I don't want to say capacity, their own, but really, I mean, they've worked to the end of their capacity that they can get to by just trying. They want to learn. They want mentors, and nobody will mentor them because there was a good 5 or 6 years where you couldn't get an honest hour of work an entire week out of a freaking millennial. It was absolutely ridiculous. You could not get them off their damn phones. I'd be sitting down at their desk trying to like explain things to them and they wouldn't even put their phone down. It's just like, what the hell are you doing here? Well, I'm just waiting for lunch so I can go hang out with my friends. I got so sick of that shit. I was like, what a waste. So that's why I would argue I would rather have somebody that only worked a few hours a week that had like really high output and produce like really high quality content than have somebody around all the time that just like sucks the life out of me and drags the whole department down with either their stupidity or their negativity. Like, anyway, both have issues, but if I had to deal with one or the other, I'd rather deal with one that I could at least get some like pretty high quality work out of. Otherwise, you end up with a whole department of people just dragging their feet. But I think a lot of people got a bad taste in their mouth from those kind of like first millennials showing up to work. But whatever kind of this like second, the tail end of the millennials, I think they want to prove themselves more than ever. And they're not all of them ready to just sit there and collect stimulus checks forever. Some of them still are competitive and still want to work hard. They just need mentors. And they need people who will take them under their wing and push them and show them the ropes and teach them the mental how to think through things, because they haven't been taught how to think through things at school. So you spend a lot of your time teaching them how to think. And then sooner or later, they'll be problem solving things exactly the same way as you. And then you tell them, okay, well, I've taught you this stuff. So now, someday when I'm gone, you have to be the people that teach the next group. And as soon as you find someone worthy with the drive, you take them under your wing. And crypto is that way, coding was that way, and now AI is that way. It doesn't matter what it is. If you just teach them the drive and listen to them, there's more than one way to do things. And so if their idea isn't bad, but you just don't understand it, they might have a better, faster way of doing things that you just never thought of before because they're interested in different stuff. But like, they could still have really good ideas. And you gotta be willing to let them fly, because they'll be running projects someday. Alright, so that's it for today, and don't forget to buy my books, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.